The movie opens with 3 police officers, Neil, Mike, and John, responding to a complaint about an aggressive dog. As they investigate, they come across one such rabid dog. The dog breaks free from its chain and attacks Mike. Neil hesitates and fails to shoot in time, which leads to Mike getting bitten. Before things get worse, John manages to shoot and kill the dog. Neil immediately contacts Officer Helen, asking her to send an ambulance to take Mike to the hospital. However, Mike insists that he's fine and refuses medical help, not wanting to deal with hospital paperwork. Neil and Mike then return to the police station. On the way, Mike tells Neil to take some time off. Neil has been mentally exhausted. Neil agrees to take a break. At the station, we meet Mike's daughter Olivia, who's extremely worried seeing her father injured. John reassures her that Mike has already been vaccinated and is safe. Olivia then hands Neil Ben's watch, the same one he had gifted his son. Neil believes Ben may no longer be alive, but both Olivia and Abby still have hope that he is out there. Later, John drops Neil off at home and hands him a radio, telling him to contact him if anything happens. John leaves and we see Abby, still deeply depressed over Ben's disappearance, continuously drinking. Neil tries to comfort her and tells her. Neil believes that his son Ben may never return, but Abby still holds on to hope. Exhausted, Neil decides to take a nap. When he wakes up, he steps outside for a walk, carrying his gun and a pack of cigarettes. He sits by the lake, lights a smoke, and begins to reflect on the moment he gifted Ben that watch. Feeling overwhelmed with grief, Neil raises the gun to end his life. But just then, he spots a girl drowning in the water. He jumps in to save her, but once he pulls her out, the girl suddenly attacks him, behaving like a zombie. Neil tries to defend himself and reaches for his gun, but it's empty. The girl lunges at him again, forcing him to grab a nearby rock and strike her repeatedly in the head until she dies. At this point, we realize that these zombies are not like traditional undead. Neil sees more zombies nearby and rushes back to his house in panic. Something terrifying and strange is clearly happening. He tries to reload his gun but can't find the bullets. That's when Abby confesses that she had thrown the bullets away. Suddenly, a zombie breaks into their house and attacks. Neil uses a broken flower vase shard to slash its neck and kills it. But almost immediately, another zombie appears and attacks him. Neil grabs a rope and strangles it to death. Realizing the danger, Neil and Abby get in the car and attempt to escape. But just a little way down the road, they see that many more people have turned into zombies. So Neil quickly turns the car around and heads back home to collect essential supplies. Back at the house, Neil gathers everything they'll need for survival, while Abby starts picking up Ben's belongings. This leads to a small disagreement. Neil insists they should only take what's necessary, not sentimental items. Eventually, they prepare to leave. Before heading out, Neil contacts John using the radio he gave him and explains everything. That people are turning violent and attacking others. He asks John to meet them at the lake. But just as he's talking, the radio signal cuts out. John immediately turns his car around and starts heading to the lake. Meanwhile, Neil and Abby also begin driving toward the same destination. As night falls, they run out of fuel in the middle of the road. Neil stops the car at a certain point and tells Abby to stay inside, while he heads out on foot toward a gas station, carrying some fuel cans. Before leaving, he picks up a lighter and a pack of cigarettes. Meanwhile, John arrives at the lake and sees the body of the drowned woman Neil tried to save earlier. Back at the gas station, the station owner has also turned into a zombie and attacks Neil. In a tense moment, Neil sets the owner on fire using the petrol and lighter, killing him. He returns to Abby, and they drive the car up to the station. Inside, they begin collecting food and supplies from the attached convenience store. Neil even leaves some cash on the counter, even though in a zombie apocalypse, money has basically lost all value. Elsewhere, John reaches Neil's home and finds it trashed. He also discovers the bodies of the 2 zombies Neil had killed earlier. He tries contacting Neil over the radio and asks where he is. Neil responds that they're at a gas station, but he plans to stop at Mike's house next before heading out of town. Neil and Abby drive toward Mike's place. Once they arrive, Neil tells Abby to stay in the car and enters the house alone. At first, it seems empty, but then Mike's wife appears. She too has turned into a zombie. She attacks Neil and nearly kills him, but he manages to grab Mike's gun and shoots her dead. Outside, Abby sees Olivia, Mike's daughter, running into the house. Abby follows her inside. To her horror, Olivia has also turned into a zombie and begins attacking Neil. Just as Neil is about to shoot Olivia, Abby rushes in and begs him to stop. Suddenly, Mike, now a zombie, enters and grabs Neil by the throat, lifting him into the air and choking him. Neil yells for Abby to shoot Mike, but she can't bring herself to do it. She drops the gun and runs away. Seriously, talk about betrayal in a crisis moment. Neil somehow breaks free and grabs the gun himself, shooting Mike, but it takes more than one bullet to bring him down. Neil fires again and finally kills him. He then sees that zombie Olivia is now chasing after Abby. Neil tries to go after them but slips down a slope and falls unconscious. While out cold, he has a dream. A flashback to the day Ben ran away from home. He remembers trying to stop his son, but Ben suddenly vanished that day and never returned. Neil eventually regains consciousness and immediately begins searching for Abby. Just then, another zombie appears. Neil spots a zombie that was once a police officer and manages to trick him into a bear trap. Using the distraction, he runs back to his car, and to his shock finds Abby sitting inside. But it's obvious now, she had also been infected. Let's be real. If Abby couldn't help her husband when he was being attacked, there's no way she could have survived Olivia. By now, the number of zombies had grown rapidly. Even several police officers had turned, which means the law enforcement was no longer in control. Neil ties Abby to the seat with a belt and begins to drive away. Along the way, he stops the car and contacts John via radio. He tells him that he's heading toward Wolf Creek, from where he plans to escape the town. John, clearly panicked, pleads with Neil to come to him instead. But before they can finish talking, the signal cuts out. Neil and Abby reach Wolf Creek where there's a watchtower. Neil carefully climbs up and spots a guard, who is also infected, and attacks him. Neil manages to grab the guard's gun and shoots him. He then uses the radio to try and inform the health department about the virus. But again, the signal drops. At the tower, Neil finds two posters, one for missing persons, featuring his son Ben, and another about a rabies outbreak spreading through animals. Putting the pieces together, Neil finally realizes that Ben is likely also infected, or worse, already turned into one of them. Devastated, Neil prepares to leave the area. But just then, John contacts him on the radio again. He tells Neil that he knows what's really going on and invites him to come over to his house. Neil arrives at John's place with Abby. Outside the house, he notices a car parked with fuel. He takes Abby out of the car, but suddenly, John steps out of the house. And he's now a zombie too. Behind him, several other zombie police officers emerge. Neil quickly aims his gun at them, but John calmly asks him to drop it, and then shoots Neil. And this is where the movie drops its biggest twist. In a shocking reveal, there were never any zombies. Yes, you heard that right. When Neil looks at himself in the car mirror, he sees himself as a zombie. That's when it all clicks. Neil had been suffering from schizoaffective disorder, a serious mental illness. His son Ben ran away after Abby told him the truth about Neil's condition. That day, Ben was standing at the edge of a cliff while Neil held onto his bag. But when Ben tried to pull his bag away, he slipped and fell to his death. Neil, completely dissociated from reality, didn't even remember it. He kept believing that Ben had simply gone missing, which only worsened his delusions over time. Everyone around him saw Neil as dangerous and unstable. People around Neil were starting to understand his mental illness, indirectly. He had even been told to go to the hospital, but Neil didn't want to go. Because somewhere deep inside his subconscious, he knew something was wrong with him. He just didn't want to accept it, or treat it. The truth? There were never any zombies. Mike's wife never attacked Neil. No one did. Olivia never attacked Abby either. In fact, Abby was trying to help Olivia and get her away from danger. That's why Abby didn't shoot Mike when Neil told her to. Not because she was scared or weak, but because she knew Mike was innocent. She wasn't the crazy one. The only person truly losing his mind was Neil. Mike was actually begging Neil not to hurt him. He even asked him why he was doing all of this. But Neil, stuck in his delusions, didn't believe a word of it. He still thought everyone was trying to manipulate him, like zombies pretending to be human. So he refused to drop the gun. Remember how earlier in the film, the zombies were dying like normal humans? That was the biggest clue. They were never zombies at all. They were real people. From the beginning. Neil then tries to shoot Abby, thinking she's infected too. But John finally puts an end to it by shooting Neil. Let's be honest. There was no other option left. Now in the final scene, we see something interesting. An evil, looking sick and almost zombie-like